distracted, isn't it? But God is at work and He is good. Amen?
All the time.
Amen.
At this time, we continue worshiping with our morning tithes and offerings. And again, this offering today will be for Sister Perez. She's a missionary that this church has supported for many years. Like I said last week, we would have designated that offering. So I know that you will be blessed by helping her. Brother Al, would you please pray over the offering?
Thank you, Lord, for the praise. Take this, take my Lord Jesus, and let it be life to your
We so much appreciate your offering for,
He doesn't know. Paula's singing. He didn't know. She told me try.
thought I was saying.
Amazing grace, how sweet that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The Lord has promised good to me. His word, my hope secure. He will my shield and portion as long as life endures. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me, and like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. chains are gone. I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. The earth shall soon dissolve like stone. The sun forbear to shine, but God who called me here below will be forever mine. Will be forever mine. You are forever mine.
Amen.
I guess they thought I was gonna sing again.
Go right ahead.
I tried to interrupt Paula once and I didn't mean to. And I'm glad she sang. That was a great song. And I was thinking about that one line out of that song where it talks about how the next time the Lord returns that He will judge this earth and it will be cleansed by fire. It would not be cleansed by water again as it was in the days of Noah. And you know, it's important to understand that it says in those days that people were just going around doing the things that human beings normally do and not giving God any notice. And that judgment came, and so the next time it'll be by fire. And when we lived in Oklahoma and Arkansas, I was pretty sure the Lord had begun that judgment. And summer times were just miserable, and you know, we've been able to kind of pick on our daughter some because she would call and complain about the heat in Little Rock, and it'd be 110 degrees some days, and we'd say, well, it just broke 80 here, we're burning up. So we really enjoyed the mildness of the summer here compared to what we've been used to. So that kind of makes me back off on that supposition that instead of judging us by fire to slow bake, the Lord still has things in store for His people. And it seems like that has really been a theme for us this morning, is reflecting on how good God is and how much He has blessed us, how He has done such a great work to bring us into salvation. And we're so thankful we get to participate in ministries that are doing great things for the Lord. Again, I do appreciate your offering for Ruben and Judy Perez. We've known them for many years. In fact, we were blessed to serve as their United States pastors. When they would come home, they were part of our congregation and our flock. And Judy's mother was among the families of the founding members of the Natural Bridge Pentecostal Holiness Church, which was started from a tent meeting that G.W. Stanley held in Natural Bridge back around not long after the Azusa Street Revival. You might know that name Stanley from the pastor of First Baptist in Atlanta, Charles Stanley. He was Charles' grandfather. And he went around and started churches. In fact, the people in Buena Vista, which is just 10 to 15 miles over from Natural Bridge, they didn't want to go to Natural Bridge for church, so they invited Brother Stanley to come back to Buena Vista. So there's two great churches there in Rockbridge County, among others, but those are two great churches there in Rockbridge County, and we were blessed to serve as pastors there. We had some folks from that flock and that congregation come by here on their way yesterday to Maryland and visit with us for a while, and we still thank God for our connection to them and for the years that we were able to serve there. And we're so happy to be back in this part of the world where the good folks of Virginia live. And I just made sure that my daughter was born in Alabama, and then once she was born in Alabama, I didn't much care where we lived after that. Just as long as she was born right. And now she grew up in Virginia, but she was born in Alabama. So she puts on her Alabama jersey, and when I put mine on, and we watch the games, and we'll text back and forth. You know, either we're happy or mad or sad, depending on what goes on. And mostly been happy the last few years. So we'll see what happens this year. You just never know. One of the things that Dave was really driving home in Sunday school this morning was talking about. He was talking about the experience that Isaiah had in his relationship to King Uzziah. Now, we were trying to figure out what that relationship was, and while you were speaking, you know, I've got Google right there on my iPad, so I Googled it right away, and it turns out that Isaiah was actually the son of Amoz, which would make him, who was one of the kings of the other side of Israel, and it made Isaiah actually first cousin to King Uzziah. So he had a family connection to him, but more than that, he had a spiritual connection, and that became an awakening for him as a prophet of the Lord. Because of his grief and sorrow, even over the death of the king who he served, he was able to come recognize that God needed somebody to stand in the gap. And so when the Lord said to him, said to everybody there in heaven before his throne, in a vision that Isaiah had, the Lord said, who are we going to send? Who's going to go stand in for us? And he said, I will. He didn't feel worthy of it. And he didn't feel like he deserved it, but he just knew that there needed to be somebody who was willing to step up and say yes. And that's exactly what God is looking for now. For us to receive the grace of God, for us to receive the salvation that the Lord brings through the blood of Jesus, is going to cost us this. We're going to have to be willing to say yes to the Lord. We receive the love of God, we receive the mercy and the grace of God, but then what do we do? What do we do with that love and mercy? What do we do with that grace that God bestows upon us? I remember in the days before I first came to salvation that I had searched out, I wanted to know God. I wanted to know who God was. I wanted to know how I could find God. I knew that God had a plan for my life. I just didn't know what it was. Though I was raised in church, the gospel, as far as I know, was never preached there, at least in a way that touched my life. I had joined the church and gotten baptized. That was because when you're 12 years old, that's pretty much what you did at that church. And they said, well, you're old enough to be accountable now, so you need to go front and shake hands with the preacher and tell him you want to join the church. And it wasn't anything about salvation that had anything to do with that. It was just, kind of a perfunctory thing. And my mother told us on a certain Sunday that, myself and my brother, we were both to go forward. We were just 11 months apart, so our ages were that close. And while I feel sorry for my mother now, having to have two babies in 2 years, we were, we went forward and did that, but it meant nothing to either one of us. And so I knew there had to be a God somewhere, and I explored different religions. I explored different spiritual ideas, or ideas that were considered to be spiritual in that time. And I was a reader and still am. Not as much maybe as I was then. I could see better then. But a reader, and I read a lot of what was available to me in different kinds of religions. And I thought, well, I'm going to find God in religion. And the more I read, the less I experienced the presence of God. It was that I knew God wasn't in those things. As I read about Eastern religions and I checked into some of the religions that are represented here in the United States, it was an empty experience for me. I wasn't finding God, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to handle that. And around that time, one of my teachers from high school, I was very involved in drama and that sort of thing. We would put on plays, and I was a big part of that opportunity in my high school. The teacher who was over that department, who was an English teacher named Carol Green, she when I think back now, she wasn't that much older than me, although I do like to kid her every year in my spiritual anniversary. I usually tell her how much I appreciate her inviting me to her a youth retreat, and then I remind her of how old I am, just to kind of maybe make her feel a bit older than me. And she doesn't really appreciate that part of it, but she's always she's rejoicing in what God has done in my life. And anyway, I asked her, I said, I really want to meet girls. That was, in high school, that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to meet girls. And she said, well, I know a place you could meet a whole lot of girls. I said, oh, really? What's that? And she's told me about this group. It was what they call a parachurch ministry, a ministry that comes alongside the church, and the ministry benefits the local churches, but it's primarily aimed at the evangelization of young people, and it still exists. It's still working in many cities in our country. There's two ministries that do that, Youth for Christ and Young Life. And I later became an associate Youth for Christ leader, but at that time it was she invited me to go to a Young Life retreat in North Alabama, and it was there that I really heard the gospel for the first time. When I really heard and understood what Jesus had done on the cross. And I know that was a spiritual revelation. It wasn't anything you can understand with your mind necessarily. In fact, if you put it in that category of intellect, it doesn't make any sense at all. Why would God become a man and then die for man? Well, coming to understand that the Lord did that in order that we might be saved. He becomes our salvation. And we're not saved because we go to the right church. We're not saved because we have the right theology. We're not saved because, we're better than somebody else. We're saved because of Jesus. We can't take any credit on ourselves for it at all. We cannot give ourselves any honor or glory when it comes to salvation. It has all been bought with a price for us through the blood of Jesus. The action that we take is to receive that mercy and grace. And that is what we can call a crisis experience. I still believe in that. Some people are in deep crisis at the moment that they receive the grace of God. Other people, their crisis has been, for me, but it wasn't that mild of a thing, other than I really wanted to know God. I really wanted to come into a relationship with God. I just didn't know how. And going to this retreat, I found out that the Lord had taken my sin upon himself. Because I thought I was a pretty good guy before that. I thought, you put me in, maybe I got a D. I'm going to get a D. A D is a passing grade. Maybe I'll get a D and I'll get to go to heaven. I won't make it in big time, but I'll just make it in. And that was based on what I thought were good works. I didn't think I broke most of the commandments. I broke in some. I knew that. But having that explained to me, I came to understand that I had broken the commandments of God, and breaking one is the same as breaking all. I'd broken more than one. So my relationship with God was not based on anything that I had done. And I always believed that God had a plan, and I knew Jesus was a part of that plan. I just didn't understand how. After hearing that message, we were all dismissed to go, and they gave us a certain amount of time. I can't remember how much it was, maybe 15 minutes or something. They said, you need to go, and you need to, don't go hang around the bonfires and talk to other kids. Don't go back to the dorm and talk to other kids, but go out and find yourself a place somewhere and just talk to the Lord about this a little bit. And I remember distinctly, it's always been a part of my testimony, there's big tall pine trees in North Alabama, and I sat down at the base of one of those trees out in the woods. And I said, now, Lord, I don't understand all this, but what I do understand is that you have given me the gift of salvation and that I must receive it. And I said, so, if this is the way to come to you, God, then I come to you tonight. And I give my life to you. I give my everything to you. And I accept you as my Lord and my Savior. And I believe that you've saved me and covered me from my sins. I didn't feel any great emotional feeling at that moment. But then I went ahead and went back to the camp. And was hanging around other kids and didn't think much about it until the next Sunday. And back in that same home church where I don't ever remember hearing the gospel, having the power of God really begin to work in my life at that point. And through a series of different things that happened, I ended up in the Pentecostal Holiness Church in Huntsville, which at that time it was the only Pentecostal Holiness Church in North Alabama. And it was a church that was a great church. It wasn't distinguished because of the denomination. It was distinguished by the presence of God there. I saw many, many young people come to the Lord. In fact, I knew I could be at home when I walked in there because there were a bunch of long-haired boys like me that came from the same background and girls that were a part of that crowd. Well, many of them had come to the Lord in different ways along that same time, and I knew some of them. Some of them from my high school, some that I knew from other places. But I immediately felt at home, immediately felt accepted. I wasn't rejected because of the way I looked, but the pastor was a fairly young guy, and he just had an open heart and a burden for the young people of Huntsville. And so that church was, by and large, young people. There were some older people as well, but many, many young people. And it was like that for many, many years. And I'm so thankful that the Lord gave me a place where I could freely receive His calling into the ministry. And from there, because I knew that I had to do something with what God had done in my life. I just wasn't sure what to do or how to do it. I didn't have any real clear direction in my life. Should I become a rocket scientist? It was unlikely that was going to happen. There were plenty of them in Huntsville, and I figured they didn't need me to come in there and mess things up. Was I going to become somebody involved in the high-tech industry, which is plenty of that in Huntsville. It's one of the high-tech cities in the South, and actually in the United States. It's called the Silicon Valley of the South, because there's so many